Hi everyone, my name is Holly, and in today's video, I'm going to be showing you all of the books that I read in April. So I read a total of 5 books, but hey, whoa, wait, before you praise me, I don't deserve it. One of them was a graphic novel, another was under 200 pages, and another one was under 300 pages, and I also have a very unpopular opinion DNF. But I honestly didn't even expect to read that much in April because Final Fantasy VII was coming out, and I knew it was going to take over my life, and it did. An RPG is a completionist's worst nightmare, but they're my favorite. So 5 books, but hey, they're 5 books that are not on my TBR anymore, and hopefully May is going to be the month where I read the most ever. And so far, it's looking pretty good. So starting with a monster of an adult fantasy that I read, Soul Keeper by David Daglish. This beast is nearing 700 pages. It came out last year and it's been on my radar ever since, and I'm so happy that I finally picked it up because boy, the first 100 pages freaking blew my mind. It was seriously one of the best storytelling moments I have ever read, and it really set the bar high for me for the rest of the book. I actually described this book on Twitter as wholesome grimdark, which makes 0 sense, but it totally fits because our main character Devin is such a sweetheart, and he runs into a fire creature and names him Puffy. He doesn't get a whole lot of page time later on in the book, which is a little sad, but I adored him. But then we also have very gory scenes and guts and entrails and sexual innuendos and cursing, so it's a mixed bag of everything. My Hufflepuff and my dark side were both very satisfied. So this is set in your pretty typical fantasy world. We are following Devin, who is a priest slash mercenary, and he is part of this keeping church, which is very prominent within the story, and he is tasked at the very beginning to go to this village which is being overrun by the plague. He gets there and shit hits the fan really quick, and events lead to the entire world changing and also monsters beginning to resurface. Though this is a very long book, it reads so quickly and I found it so hard to put it down, and I will admit it does slow down a little bit in the middle, and some of the characters don't make the smartest decisions. Like 2 characters are sitting on top of a roof while there's like human eating owls flying around. But this is truly a really enjoyable story, and I have already read the sequel, which I will be reviewing in my next wrap up, so be sure to look out for that. I ended up giving this 4 out of 5 stars. I highly recommend at least for those first 100 pages because I could reread that all day. So finally, what I've been waiting for, let's go flip this on my shelf. Now I'm extra excited to turn around the sequel. So next up is a book that I did not expect to pick up so soon, and that is Along the Razor's Edge by Rob J. Haze. For an indie author, Rob J. Haze has thrown his name out into the universe, and I feel like he's done really well for himself. This is a very dark, brutal fantasy that is fairly on the short side, but it doesn't feel short. The story is very large and in charge. Most of the story is being told to us from our main character, Eska, who is this 15-year-old girl, and she is retelling what happened when she was stripped of all of her magic and was thrown into the pit, which is this brutal prison that is deep underground where inmates, also known as scabs, reside, and they basically mine all day. They eat gruel and they never see the sunlight ever again. I have never read a book where I truly felt like I was with these characters suffering this nightmare. Haze has created an environment like no other, and that is one hell of a feat for a novel under 300 pages, and even more impressive of how fast it went. In fact, the pace kind of reminded me of The Armored Saint by Mike Cool, and this honestly felt like an introductory to a villain story. Like, this is how villains are made. In fact, Eska is a character that I normally wouldn't like. She's a risk taker, she talks back, she thinks she's invincible, but this makes her a very strong character, and being in a place where she's at, I mean a freaking prison, she needs to be. You can just feel the anger radiating off of the pages as she speaks and as you're reading the story. This is very dark, very brutal, very gory, so please keep that in mind. I ended up giving this 4.5 out of 5 stars. It was so good. This was a huge surprise, and I cannot wait to continue on with the story. And then I also read Shorefall by Robert Jackson Bennett. I told you in my April TBR that I was going to read this, and I was getting a little worried because April was almost over, so I decided to pick it up last minute. I wasn't going to let you guys down with another mood reading moment, so finally I picked it up, and wow, it's intense. First off, if you haven't had the pleasure to read Foundry Side yet, which is its predecessor, I highly recommend. This book starts off with a bang. It actually takes place 3 years after the events of Foundryside, so some time has passed, and I was honestly very worried that I was going to forget a lot of details, and I kind of did. But thankfully the author does a really good job at catching you up on all of those details. But some scenes I was like, what? Who is this character? Now, the overarching plot isn't something terribly special. In fact, I've seen it done many times before. But what makes it unique is all of its intricacies and its details. And that's what makes this series stand out to me, is all these twists and turns that leads you into wanting to know what the heck is going on. The intrigue and logic is truly where this book shines. The first book was a lot of world setup, and the sequel is a lot of showing you what the problem is and the characters having to find a way to fix that problem, and I'm assuming the third book is going to be very explosive because, man, this ending is insane. It's more insane than Foundryside, and that's saying a lot. I ended up giving this 4 out of 5 stars, and the reason why I didn't give it 5 out of 5 stars is the same reason for Foundryside. Bennett's writing style is a little bit different. He likes to repeat words a lot, and he also likes to make things that are simple and write them in a complicated way, and some conversations I felt like were a little bit too long. But other than that, I cannot wait to read the finale. The next book I read was Valley of the Free by Michael Slider. So this book currently is a very weird one to review. This is a prequel novella to the Pandemonium Rising series. The first 2 books released, and then this one was. And from fellow reviewers, who I am friends with, by the way, I feel so betrayed, said that this would be a fantastic starting point into this world. I think that might have been a huge mistake. Now, don't get me wrong, I did really enjoy this, and it gave me a really good idea on what the author's writing style is like. Okay, does it make sense to say lush and grungy at the same time? Because that's the best way I can describe it. And this does have me very excited to read the rest of the series. I mean, this book was all about a mercenary who is gathering an army to get revenge for the death of his grandfather, but it just left me a little bit confused about the world. It kind of felt like I was missing a piece of the puzzle, which is where the first book would have laid out a great foundation for me. So I don't have a rating for this one. I will be flipping it on my shelf because I read it, but I cannot wait to go on to Soulless Lost, and then I will be revisiting this definitely. So by this time of the month, I was just wanting to pick up something short, so I decided to pick up Zodiac Star Force. This was the only graphic novel on my physical TBR that I hadn't read. I have a shelf that is half full of graphic novels, and this was the only one sitting there unread. So I thought to finally fix that. It's kind of like a Sailor Moon / Power Rangers mix, where a group of high school girls with magical powers band together to fight baddies. I loved the artwork and diversity in this, but unfortunately, I just didn't enjoy the story that much. I felt like I was thrown in with these characters who had already gone through so much backstory and development that we didn't get to see at all. A lot of past stuff is just quickly mentioned, and I was super meh about it. This honestly felt like a volume 2 instead of a volume 1. I ended up giving this 2 out of 5 stars, and I won't be continuing on with the series. Okay, so now on to the DNF, and you know what? It is what it is. I ended up DNFing Mort by Terry Pratchett. I'm going to be so real and so honest with you, like I always am. I struggled through this so badly, and I feel so pressured to finish it because of the serious cult following that this series / author has. But I think that's gonna be it for me. This is part of the Discworld universe. Technically it's book 4, but they are separated into different series, so book 1 within the Death series. While reading this, I got to page 80 by the way, it suddenly hit me. It reminds me so much of the classic book The Adventures of Alice in Wonderland, which I hate, by the way. And I also went into expecting it to be a favorite. They have nothing to do with each other, the story isn't even close to being similar, but for some reason the writing and the characters reminded me so much of it, which was the absolute worst part of Alice for me. The randomness of it was also very similar as well. Mort runs into an annoying character every 3 pages, just like Alice. So with those aspects at the forefront of my mind, I knew immediately that this was not going to be a favorite, and I had to end it. I mean, Death was the most interesting character, but that's the only good thing that is going to come from me. I'm sorry. Alrighty, so those are all the books that I read in April. Tell me down below what you read in April. Tell me your favorite book and also the worst book. Go ahead and give this video a big thumbs up if you enjoyed because that helps me out so much. Go ahead and subscribe. I upload videos every single week. Follow me on Instagram at Holly Arts Books, on Twitter at Holly Niece. And until we meet again, happy reading.